This is Nick with Logos by Nick.com, and in today's tutorial I'll be demonstrating how you could design this logo with Inkscape. So let's go ahead and get started here at Inkscape. By the way, if you'd like to know how you can update the icons and use a dark theme like you see here on my screen, I'll have a link to that information in the description of the video. So the first thing we'll do is set up our document. We'll go to File, Document Properties, and we want to set the display units to PX. And turn off the, uncheck the box that says Show Page Border, close out of that. Then we'll go to View, and we will want Custom selected, and then Zoom in at 1:1. Open up the Align and Distribute menu with this button here, and we're going to want Last Selected chosen from that drop down. And then we'll open up the Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Stroke menu with that button there. So the first thing I'm going to create is the circle on the inside here, those two circles there. So to do that, I'm going to grab the Circles and Ellipses tool, hold Control and Shift on the keyboard, and click and drag to create a perfectly round circle like that. Let me grab the Select tool and move this towards the center of the page. And what I want to do now is I want to turn off the fill color by clicking this X down here in the bottom left corner. And I want to give it a black outline by holding Shift and clicking black, or I'm going to use 90% gray for this one. And that should give a black outline there. If you notice on my screen, it gave me a dotted outline. If that happens to you as well, just go to Stroke Style, and where it says dashes, click on that and go to the top of the list where it has a straight line like that, and we'll use that. And now that we're in the Stroke Style tab, we could just go ahead and set this to pixels. I'm going to change the width of this. I want this to be a little thicker. I'm going to use maybe 15 pixels, see how that looks. That's pretty good. Let's bring the opacity of that down about in half. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate this circle. I'm just going to right click it and go to duplicate. And then before I do what I'm going to do next, we just want to come up here and make sure we have this box unchecked that says when scaling objects, scale the stroke width by the same proportion. We want that turned off. So if that's checked, go ahead and uncheck that. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and click and drag to scale this one down a little bit. And I'll make this one about half the size, so I'll try 7.5. That's pretty good. I'll hold Control and Shift, and I'm just going to scale that up a little more. That looks pretty good. So what I'm going to create next are the arrows. So to do that, I'll come over here to the Squares and Rectangles tool, and I'll hold Control and Shift and click and drag to create a perfect square like that. And I'm going to make that one solid fill in black. And I'll get rid of the black outline by holding Shift and clicking on the X down here. And I want to convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path, then grab the Select tool and click on this box until we get the rotation handles. And then I'm going to hold Control and take one of this top right handle right here and just rotate it around until it's sitting with the corners going vertically and horizontally like that. And what I'll do now is I'll go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and I'll take this node right here. I'm going to hold Control on the keyboard and click and drag this up about that far. And then I'll hold Control and take that node, this node right here, and bring that up about that far like that. And there we have the head of the arrow. So let me go back to the Select tool. I'll hold Control and just click and drag to scale that down a little bit. And now I'm going to create the actual the long part of the arrow here. So to do that, I'll just grab the Rectangles tool, Squares and Rectangles. Click and drag to create a rectangle like that going through it. Something that size is pretty good. Convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. And now we want to create the bottom portion of the arrow, which is down here. So to do that, we'll stay on the Squares and Rectangles tool and just come down here and create another rectangle like that. And again, we'll convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. We'll go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool and click and drag over all of those nodes, all 4 of them, and come up here to the far left where it says Insert New Nodes into Selected Segments. Go ahead and click on that, and it's going to put new nodes in between the existing nodes. And then I just want to click and drag over these 2 right here. Let me zoom in to show you. I'm going to hold Control and roll up on the mouse wheel to zoom in. Click and drag over those 2 middle nodes right there. With them selected, we could hold Control on the keyboard and just shift them up about that much. Now I can press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out to 100%. And I'd say that's all looking pretty good right there. So what I'll do is I'll go to the Select tool, click and drag over all of that, and just make sure we have it centered on the vertical axis. and then unify it all together by going to Path, Union. And I'll bring this over to the circle. I'm going to hold Control and Shift and scale this down a bit. Scale it down a little more. And as you notice here, I got it to the size and thickness I want. It's just not as long. So to make it longer, I'll just go back to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and I'll click and drag over these nodes up here, and hold Control and just pull them up like that. I'll go back to the Select tool, and that's looking pretty good. So what I'll do now is I'll click on this again to get the rotation handles, and hold Control and rotate this 1, 2, 3 steps to the right like that. And then hold Shift and click on one of the circles there and center it on the vertical and horizontal axis like that. And then click off it to deselect everything. Then I'll click on the arrow right here, hit Control D to duplicate that, Control D on the keyboard. You could right click it and go to duplicate. And with that selected, I'll just flip that horizontally with this button up here that says Flip Selected Objects Horizontally. So we now have the arrows in place. What we have to do now is get rid of the part of the arrows that run through the circle. So I'm going to click on the larger circle on the outside here and duplicate that by hitting Control D. And then I'll hold Shift and click on this arrow right here and go to Path, Difference. And I'll do the same thing with this arrow over here. Click on the circle, Control D to duplicate, hold Shift, click on that arrow, and go to Path, Difference. And we now have that in place. So the next thing I'm going to put here are these little this little partial circle going around the outside. So to do that, I'm just going to take this inner circle right here, the smaller one, and I'm just going to duplicate that by hitting Control D, and just hold Control and Shift and scale that out to about there. And that's looking pretty good. So what we have to do now is just segment it like you see here in the thumbnail. It's segmented into 4 different shapes. So to do that, what I first want to do is convert this to a path. So I'll go to Path, Stroke to Path. And I'll come over here to the Squares and Rectangles tool, and I'll hold Control and Shift and click and drag to create a big, perfect square like that. And I'll just make that red for now so we can differentiate it from the rest of the graphic. And I'll grab the Select tool and click on this again to get the rotation handles, and hold Control and rotate this clockwise 1, 2, 3 steps like that. So we have the corners going vertically and horizontally. And I'll just come and put this right about here. The intersecting area between the red object and this line is going to be what's left over. So if you notice, like right about there, that looks pretty good. And I'll hold Shift and click on the circle and just make sure it's centered on the horizontal axis. Click off it to deselect everything. Then I'll take this square and I'll duplicate that, again just hitting Control D. Then I'll hold Control and click and drag this over here to about the same distance. And then hold Shift and click on the other red square, and we can unify them both together by going to Path, Union. And now I want to hold Shift and click on the circle right there, and let's center it on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis like that. Click off it to deselect everything. And I want to take these two red squares, and I want to duplicate them by hitting Control D. And I want to rotate them 90 degrees clockwise or counterclockwise, either one. So just go ahead and click that button. And then we can hold Shift and click on the other squares and unify them both together by going to Path, Union, and then hold Shift and click on the this new circle on the outside we just created. And with them both selected, go to Path, Intersection. And we now have that segmented circle set up. So what I'm going to create next are these little dashes going along the inside here. So to do that, I'm going to click this circle right here. Either one actually should work. Just duplicate it by hitting Control D. We'll make that red. We'll turn off the outline by holding Shift and clicking the X. And I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and scale it up until the edge of the red circle is about halfway between the edge of this circle and the edge of this circle. So it doesn't have to be halfway between, but roughly so should be good. And again, to zoom in and out, I'm just holding Control and rolling up and down the mouse wheel. So what I'll do now is I'm going to create a rectangle. Come to the Squares and Rectangles tool and click and drag to create a small little rectangle like that. That's longer than it is wide like that. That's pretty good. And we'll go to Path, Object to Path, and I'll go back to the Select tool, and I want to right click on this and go to Copy. And now I want to click on this red circle right here, and I want to go to Path, Path Effects, and we're going to get this path effects menu right here. I'm going to click the plus icon that says add path effect, and we're going to get this little menu here. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it, and I want to look for the one that says pattern along path right there. Pattern along path. Go ahead and click add, and from this new menu that pops up, we want to change the pattern copies to repeated stretched. And then after we've done that, just click on the button that says link to path on clipboard. And then what I'll do is where it says spacing, I'll just reduce that a bit. Actually, no, increase that. We want to increase the spacing. And you'll notice it took the rectangle and it spaced it out going along the shape of the circle. So, and what you could actually do now is you could take this shape right here and edit it if you want to, and it'll edit the rest of them. So let me go back to this. Let me decrease the spacing a bit. Actually, no, I want to leave the width alone. I meant to use the spacing there. Here we go. Where'd it go? Change that back to 1, I think that was, yeah, 1. And I'll take this and I'll decrease the spacing. And I'm just going to scale this down a little bit. Maybe I'll increase the spacing a little more. This is just a matter of personal preference at this point. So once you've gotten to this point, you're pretty good. So once we've got it to we've got it to look how we like it, just finalize it by going to path, object to path. And then we can close out of the path effects menu. And now we just want these little dashes here to be on the left and right side of the circle, like you see here in the thumbnail. So to fix that, I'll just go to the squares and rectangles tool and hold Control and Shift to create another perfect symmetrical square like that. And I'm just going to make this one green. And I'll go to the select tool. Click on it again, click on the shape again to get the rotation handles, hold Control and rotate it 1, 2, 3 steps to the right. And just come and put this right about here. Hold Shift, click on the circle and make sure it's centered on the vertical axis, horizontal axis actually. Click off it to deselect, and I'm just going to bring this over just a tad bit like that. And I'm just going to duplicate that by hitting Control D. And hold Control and bring this one over here. Like that, and then hold Shift and click on the other square, unify them both together by going to Path Union, and then hold Shift and click on the red dashes and just make sure it's centered up on the vertical axis. Click off it to deselect, and then we could take the green squares right here, and I'm just going to adjust the size a little bit, like that, and we could hold Shift, click on the red shape, and go to Path Intersection, and I'll make that black as well, and I'll press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out to 100%. And let me zoom in on this a little bit. You know, if you'll notice, there's like a little bit of like a fragmented piece left over here. If you want to get rid of that, you just go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool and click on the object, and then just click and drag over the nodes right there. Just hold Shift and click and drag over the other ones, and we have all of those nodes selected. And just press Delete on the keyboard. And we can do the same thing over here. Just click and drag over all those nodes, press Delete on the keyboard, and that's an easy way to get rid of that. Now we'll go back to the Select tool, click off of the graphic to deselect everything, and the next thing we should create here are these little ribbons on the side. So I'm going to zoom in over this left-hand side by holding Control and rolling up the mouse wheel, and I'll grab the Squares and Rectangles tool. The Squares and Rectangles tool, and click and drag to create a rectangle like that. Convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path, and grab the Edit Paths by Nodes tool and grab those two nodes right there and add a new node between those two. The button right here that says Insert New Nodes into Selected Segments. Then I'll click on that node right there, so just that middle one selected, and hold Control and just bring that to the right a little bit like that. And we'll grab the Select tool, hold Shift, click on the circle and make sure it's centered on the horizontal axis. Click off it to deselect. And I'm just going to move this over a bit. And what I want to do now is take this partial circle here and hit Control D to duplicate that. And then hold Shift and click on this ribbon right here and go to Path, Difference, and then Path, Break Apart. and then hold shift and deselect that ribbon so we just have that segment selected, and press delete on the keyboard so it fits there like that. And I'm just going to hold control and roll up the mouse wheel a little bit to zoom in a little more. And I'm just going to hold control and just bring this to the right a little bit so it goes into there. And I want to duplicate this by hitting Control D and flip that horizontally, and then just hold control and bring this one over here like that. So we have one on each side. And I'm just going to add some text in there now. Well, first I'm going to hold shift and click on the other one. We want to make sure we have them both centered up evenly. So with them both selected, I'm going to group them together and then hold shift and click on the circle and just make sure it's centered on the vertical axis. And then we could ungroup it with this button here that says ungroup. Click off it to deselect, and now I'm going to put some text in there. So I'll grab the text tool and I'm just going to use the year 2017, so I'll hit 20. I'm going to choose a different font from the text selector up here. The font I'm going to use is Lead Gothic. You can use whichever font you'd like. And grab the select tool, hold shift, click on this first ribbon and center it up on the vertical and horizontal axis. Click off of it to deselect, and then take just the number here. Just hold control and shift and scale it up like that. And place it where it ought to be. That looks pretty good. I'll make that white. And I'll duplicate that by hitting Control D and then hold control and bring this over to the right over here. And then go back to the text tool and just write in 17 like that. Go back to the select tool and just center that up like that, and that looks pretty good. And the next step would be to add some text going around the perimeter here. And if you notice in the thumbnail I used, I wrote logo design with Inkscape. So what I'm going to do now is grab the text tool. Actually, no, first I want to grab this circle right here, the large circle, and duplicate that by hitting Control D. And I want to make that red and get rid of the outline by holding shift and clicking the X. I'm sorry, holding control. No, holding shift and clicking the X. Yeah, make that red. And I'll hold control and shift and just scale this circle up like there. Right about there. The edge of this circle is going to be where the base of the text is sitting. So the text will be going along here like that. So I'm just going to make that a little smaller. That's something to keep in mind when determining the size of this circle. That's a pretty good size right there. So press 1 to zoom back out to 100%. I'll grab the text tool and click on the canvas to get the blinking cursor, and I'm just going to use all caps and write logo design. And I want to space that out a bit, so I'll come up here to where it says spacing between letters and just hold up on that arrow to space that out a bit. I'll grab the select tool and I'll just hold control and scale up the size of that text a little bit, and that's pretty good right there. And once I have this text set, I want to duplicate that by hitting Control D and bring this down here. Go back to the text tool and just change this one to the other side's text, which for me will be with Inkscape. And now that we've done that, we could take this text and hold shift, click on the red circle and go to text, put on path. And you'll see it put the text going along that circle. And now we can click off that to deselect everything and take just the circle right here. And then click on it again to get the rotation handles and rotate the circle around in order to rotate the text like that. And we'll put that right about there like that. That looks pretty good. And we could finalize that, maybe over a little more. We could finalize that by clicking on the text and going to Path, Object to Path. And now we could take the circle and hold Control and Shift and scale it up more so that the text sits inside of it, because we're going to need that for the next line of text that we're using here. And now we want to flip the circle horizontally by clicking the button up here that says Flip Selected Objects Horizontally. And nothing happens visually on the page, but we're going to need that in order for this text to go on the inside of the circle instead of going on the outside like this one did. So we can take this text now and hold Shift, click on the circle, and go to Text, Put on Path. Click off it to deselect everything, and then click on just the circle right here. Click on it again to get the rotation handles and just rotate it around, and you'll see we have the text running on the inside of the circle like that. Place it right about there. That's good. We could finalize that by clicking on the text and going to Path, Object to Path. Take the red circle and just press delete on the keyboard. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this inner circle, this thin inner border right here, and I'm going to convert that to a path by going to Path, Stroke to Path. And I'll do the same thing with the large circle on the outside. Click on that and go to Path, Stroke to Path. Press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out to 100%, and we can click and drag over everything. Oops. Click and drag over everything and bring the opacity all the way up. And we're almost done. The next step would be to just put some text in there. You can put whatever you want in there. For this tutorial, I just wrote Inkscape in there. So to do that, I'll just grab the text tool, click on the canvas, and again, using all caps. On one line, I wrote INKS. And on the next line I wrote C-A-P-E. And I'll go to the select tool. I'm going to click and drag over both of those text items and grab the text editor up here. Just so I can make them both the font I want to use, which is Lead Gothic. Go ahead and click Apply. Close out of that. Hold Control and Shift and scale that up. Put that right about here. We'll center them up on the vertical axis. Let me change that to the dark gray I was using. I'll group them together with this button up here that says Group Selected Objects. Then hold Shift and click on one of the circles there and just make sure it's centered up using on the vertical and horizontal axis like that. And you'll see we have finished. Our logo is now complete. So that's how you could do that with Inkscape. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching.